Hey, I don't know, I guess you people are watching on the monitors. Anyway, if you don't know what the crypto show is, we started in 2013, went on air in 2014 as a pirate radio station, later moving on to Bloomberg. It was very interesting beginnings. We were in an anarchist bookstore underneath a Chase Bank running Bitcoin miners. So that was our tagline. Undermining the bank and the man and having some fun while we do it. And we had a lot of fun. So we've got some great ones today. Delta Blue, who is with Volition Labs, and they're doing the NFT stuff here. So we're going to find out a little bit about what you can get done with NFTs. And then Colin Cantrell. And a little bit later, we'll be joined by Jedlika. He is from Liberland. He is in a cab right now on his way. But Colin is with Nexus.io, which is a very, very ambitious project. I mean, every time I talk to him, he's reinventing the wheel in some way or another when it comes to internet and blockchains and just everything you can imagine. IPFS, we'll find out about a lot of that stuff. So I wanted to talk with Delta first, of course, so that you can find out what you can get done with the NFTs here at the conference and some of the ideas that you have about NFTs.
Well, Dan, where should we start? Should we start with what is an NFT, or should we just launch right into what an NFT can do? What would you prefer? Where are we gauging the audience?
Is that a non-food taco?
Non-food taco. Yeah, so an NFT, a non-food taco, a non-fungible token, is really the latest technical innovation within blockchain technology. It's quite a watershed moment because it's the first time we've really transitioned from data already existing on a blockchain, such as a cryptocurrency or a smart contract, to a stage now where users can actually load up their own data onto a blockchain, which they then can control, rather their data being controlled by big tech corporations on their behalf. So it's a big step in the direction of what people call really Web3. It's the new generation of web technology, which is decentralized internet. And so we're seeing this kind of convergence of blockchain technology with a fully integrated, decentralized internet. And with NFT technology, it's really the first use case that we've had of users loading up their own data onto the blockchain. And that has come in the form of art, predominantly in the last 2 years, with this big NFT explosion. But it's inevitably going to progress into music. It's happening now, and then also videos and films and things like this. But because it's visual, it's enabled the mainstream to get really pulled into the blockchain space, which is, of course, fantastic because they're having to, engage with wallet technology and cryptocurrencies and things like that. Of course, that's the only way you can actually engage with NFTs on the blockchain. But with that, there's also, if you're going to consider to what extent those people in the mainstream who are actually engaging with NFTs actually understand the core principles of blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies and their ability to preserve privacy and sovereignty within a global digitized, insecure environment, it's quite unlikely that people do understand that. And that's why I'm really excited that Anarchapulco is firmly putting those core principles of cryptocurrencies and blockchain back onto the NFT agenda by promoting freedom-themed NFT here at the conference.
Yeah, we've got some pretty cool NFT stuff that we're going to be teaching how to make NFTs and what, like she said, what they are. What it amounts to really is digital authenticity. You can authenticate what that a specific image came from the originator of it. Tell me what that means. Because anybody can make a copy. You can make 1 million copies of it. Why is it important that it came from one source?
Yes, it's the first time that you can actually register ownership onto a decentralized database in a way that is immutable and censorship resistant. So the whole point of blockchain technologies is that when any kind of data is authored onto a blockchain, it is immutable. You can't change it at all because it's not held on a centrally controlled server. It's held on many, many points across a distributed network across the world, which means that even if you try and censor one of those nodes, they're all presenting the same instance of the blockchain and that database at the same time all the time. So it's what they call whack-a-mole, where if you're just trying to hit one of them and trying to take down Bitcoin servers in China or whatever, the rest of the nodes are still going to present the same amount of information. So basically, with NFTs, what's kind of exciting about them is that it's the first time that users have got the opportunity to load up their own data, be it photographs or videos or things like that, but in a way that cannot be censored. And in this current time of unprecedented levels of censorship, this is really significant for the freedom movement and for those who actually understand about the importance of censorship-free technologies.
What about like legal documents or anything? Or is there any use case for legal documents or like your
well,
house
I mean,
title?
the whole NFT space is super nascent, right? We've only really had kind of NFTs in the public consciousness for the last year or two. So the whole, yeah.
I can envision like a .gov issuing you your home title on an NFT.
Well, the new really expanding area for NFTs is absolutely in the real estate market, where because you're able to track the provenance of an art piece on the blockchain, and you can see exactly who's transferred it to who, so you don't have to have the issue of trying to work out who originally authored the piece of art. If, you can see the provenance of it, and that's the same, of course, within the property market, that you can see exactly who it's come from. So we're seeing the initial phases of a technology that could well take out a lot of, the legal market, a lot of the private real estate market and things like this, and replace it with blockchain technology. Yeah.
It could have really been effective for the truckers in Canada actually recently. So I did
well,
something very similar.
they got their money censored, of course, didn't they, on the crowdfunding sources? Absolutely.
So
yeah.
during Hurricane Ida, I went down to New Orleans, and I met this guy who was volunteering with the Cajun Navy, and the guy had lost his shrimp boat, right? So I did this video with him of him telling a story about losing his shrimp boat, and then turned that into an NFT as a crowdfunder and started selling that. So envision all of the truckers selling their own NFTs to fund this fight against the government.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, making one of the most important points that we're kind of seeing the mainstream coming into NFTs and blockchain technology, and what's happening then is we're kind of seeing the mainstream attention being taken into the metasphere with NFTs in terms of wearables and all these collectible things that you can get in the metasphere. Everything's being pushed in that direction, where of course you have unlimited freedoms. You can be any kind of rainbow cat or laser shooting robot or whatever you want, whilst of course in this reality you have your freedoms increasingly diminished. But yes, basically with what's happening from the freedom movement that is just starting to happen, I hope it catches on in Truckistan as well, is that that basically we're seeing a number of incidences where people are coming together and forming DAOs and then using NFTs to crowdfund for really, really important real-world change. And we saw that with Free Ross DAO back in November, when about 1,000 crypto investors...
as well.
Exactly. So 1,000 crypto investors came together, formed a decentralized autonomous organization for Ross Ulbricht, who's still languishing in prison right now. And they took one of his images that he drew of his prison cell, and then they auctioned it and raised 6 million, 10 million in total through the DAO. So that's pretty significant for his legal campaign to get him out of his double life sentence.
Well, it's actually not for the legal campaign. It was
That's true.
to help families who can't afford to visit their loved ones in prison. It's for his prison campaign, but also for his own campaign as well. It's true, yeah. And then with Assange, I believe they raised 62 million with his NFT, which was a collaboration with PAC. That's got to be some of the largest fundraising ever.
Well, the important thing with a decentralized autonomous organization is that you can set the parameters through a smart contract of how everyone then pays into it and how the money goes out. So you have that just impregnated onto the blockchain with parameters that are fixed and are visible, and that gives investors confidence to get involved into these DAOs, and they're having a huge amount of power to actually, whilst you've got like mainstream NFTs trying to take us into the metasphere and kind of enslave us through this like meta.
I want to get some
Orwellian nightmare. We've also got this opposite
from Colin on this about the DAO. I know you're familiar with DAOs, right? Let's give Colin the mic. Are DAOs workable long term? Because I worked with Dash, and it was fantastic.
They don't socially scale.
It was fantastic short term, but once the Dash core group was able to just take over the voting pool by when the price of Dash would go down, they would just amass more and more masternodes, and now the network is pretty much just completely just overrun by Dash core group, and no one else gets to vote. So what's your take on DAOs? Are they good short term, long term, not at all?
I mean, I think it's a great concept, and I haven't personally witnessed any functional DAOs. Like, they're semi-functional, like partially done. Like sometimes you rely on manual processes, but like, I mean, something like Dash, the first DAO, like, I mean, they have you buy into the system and you have enough money, right? But that is a problem because if we look at, how much money is out there, hundreds of trillions, I think, and all derivatives and everything, right? So, I mean, how hard is it to buy out a DAO, buy out the market cap, right? So there's the old money buys new time problem, right? So it's easy to infiltrate. Like if you want to take over a DAO, just punch a bunch of money into it, you take over the voting pool, and if the protocol cryptographically enforces it, then, you own it. So, I think as far as I see DAOs, I think the potential is there, but there's a lot of technical implementation that needs to be done to reach that goal. Same with, blockchain in general, right? There's a lot of technical implementation that isn't fully matured yet for it to fully realize that true vision of decentralization. So like the pure decentralized DAO, I think is coming, but I think there's some technical limitations that need to be assessed first, right? And one of those is the social organizational issue, right? The social scalability issue. People don't scale. And when you get decentralization, sometimes it's kind of like herding cats, right? And so you can have these cryptographic enforcement mechanisms to, give people different ways to manage money, but there's the whole social organizational issue that comes in, and you get power dynamics, and, a centralization inevitably kind of is like a law of entropy, right? Hey, what's up again, bud? How you doing?
Hey, how are you? How are you?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the law of entropy, second law of thermodynamics states, in a closed system, everything decays towards chaos. So, the chaotic entropy of decentralization is centralization, right? So there's not clear precedences that are set in the social organizational model that incubates that pure decentralization. So I'm seeing like DAOs are, the concepts are there, some of the proof of concepts, the prototypes, but there's a whole other bit. Like as I started studying DAOs, I was like, well, nobody's reassessed social organization for thousands of years.
Would you not say, though, that if there's some kind of takeover in that sense, that that's not just an expression of free market capitalism and that's actually just part of this?
Well, yeah, but that's not what we're trying to create, because what we're trying to do is create a new system that's immune to corruption, right, and being taken over, at least what I designed DAOs for, right? So if the old money can buy new time, you're in the same position. So what you need to do is figure out how to make old money not buy the new time, only new time buy the new, or new money buy the new time.
If code is law, then how can you have corruption within a DAO?
Well, that's the problem, is people are saying code is law, but they don't know how to code. And that's why I say it's not ready. And I'm a software engineer. I've been developing this stuff for decades. So, we kind of take it slow, and we're implementing different things. And, you have the code as law, that's one, but you also have social precedences, right? And the code needs to reflect those social architectures. And that's just something that I found in studying the human dynamics, studying power, studying corruption. I mean, I've seen a lot of corruption, taken on a lot of corruption, seen what it does, seen how power channels and greasy wheels get,
But if you're exploiting a weakness in a protocol, then is that corruption, or is that just not?
Well, that's incompetence.
But not on the
Well, and
not
I mean,
part
look
of the
at the
hacker.
DAO from Ethereum. I mean, they deployed a $100 million contract, and there was a recursive bug where it wasn't updating the actual balance, and somebody drained the DAO, and then they had to fork their protocol and censor it to make it fixed, right? So I mean, that's why I say the concepts are there, but when you go to immutable code, I just don't think we have enough of the knowledge of all the dynamics that go into making a fully functional, healthy, purely decentralized DAO. So hitting that immutable code now, you can do it in small segments, but still you're going to run into so many flaws, right? And so we're in architectural development right now for our DAO, right? Social architectural development, software architectural development. We also we use different mechanisms of weight, like trust, and time, where you have to actually spend time into the system with the coins. You have to weight your coins and the time, so it makes it more difficult to take over, and using different equations and stuff like that. So I mean, it's not perfect, but I see that the concepts are there, but it's just the technology's not.
Yeah, that was my original question. Like short term, I can see with
Yeah,
Ross's DAO and Julian's DAO.
Yeah,
these
they
are
work.
great tools. They made it happen. But long term, watching Dash and
Exactly.
because I was paid from the DAO, and I seen what was happening and the way things changed.
And then they went all suit.
The community was fantastic. And they were always great people, but
Yep.
more and more, Dashboard Group took it over.
Yep.
And it's just like any
Happened
government.
to Bitcoin too.
Just like government.
Yeah. And I mean, there's this.
No, because you have the choice to walk away.
Yeah, that's true. So before I go any further, I do want to get your take on what you're doing with the NFTs here and what people can actually do with you guys and the art.
Yeah, so at volitionlabs.io, we're supporting Anarchapulco with their vision to really firmly put the core principles of blockchain on the agenda with NFTs, which is frankly not happening in the space. You know, the whole space has just been kind of taken over by this insipid millennial banality, in my view, you know, like visually interesting things, but actually, in fact, not making any comment about, you know, the political reality that we live in at the moment, and you know, the huge unprecedented levels of censorship and, you know, loss of freedoms. And no one is really kind of taking that territory within NFTs and using the censorship-resistant nature of the technology to really kind of push the boundaries of free speech. And I think that's what Anarchapulco wants to put on the agenda by pioneering, actually creating these NFT collectibles of the talks, and then also there's an amazing exhibition that's been put up with artist Ulysses XYZ, who does design for Anarchapulco, and he's got an NFT show happening at the back over there, and he's also doing NFT freedom portraits of people. So there's a number of, and then Pirate Chain did a song with Jeff Berwick as well, you know, so there's quite a lot of activity happening over the conference with regards to NFTs, and I believe that you're going to be auctioning these off at the end of the talks and things. So the point is, to me, that I think that if you're going to get into NFTs, because of course there's a lot of like asset upside, but you know, vote with your money and vote for freedom and vote for things that are going to have long-term longevity. And for those of us who believe in freedom and think that freedom is going to be the prevailing mood of the modern day, then, you know, put your money where your mouth is and support the freedom movement. And as we've seen, NFT assets are a fantastic way for raising money. You know, support the movement, give money to these people, and then also you'll have an asset that will most likely appreciate as we increasingly win the war for freedom.
So basically what we are doing is we're going to pick some of the top speakers, and you'll take a picture with the speaker if you are the top bidder, and they will turn that into a cartoon, a physical caricature, and you keep that caricature, and the NFT of that will be yours as well, and it will be the cover photo or the thumbnail for the YouTube video that goes out on that. So you own all of those assets. So that's, if we just tried to make it a YouTube video, well, that YouTube video is on Anarchapulco's site, so that's not very rare. So we think, you know, doing this kind of art, that adds the rarity to it, and that's what would be the interest in that. So if we will have an auctioneer who's going to be auctioning these things off, and so whoever the high bidder is on this, that's what's available. Let's move on to Colin, and tell me about this IPFS thing.
Oh, well, so I had to like refactor the API from Bad Coder, long story, and I kind of just like really got sick of it, so I had to write something beautiful. So I made a query language on the Nexus API, and you know, Ernie's been talking about like, I have IPFS, I need my pirate box, I need search. So I was like, okay, I'll figure it out. And I figured it out, and then he's like, oh, you got it. So now we're gonna build it, and we're doing a little demo on Wednesday, which is just showing decentralized search, because Nexus is a register-based virtual machine, so that's how we get high scalability, you know, about 70 million instructions per second. A register functions similar to a non-fungible token, but you have different asset ownership. It's a 7-layer software stack. Long story short, you can search the entire... Long story short, you can search...
Oh, you guys don't speak Colin?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll slow down. I'll slow down. Okay. I know. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Nexus is a register-based virtual machine. A register is a small snippet of data. It's software or hardware runs registers. Your processor has little registers in there. Like, your processor is just doing computing, right? So you got to store data that you're computing. So it's mimicking how a hardware processor works. Virtual machines that exist now, like Ethereum, Java, whatever, those are stack-based. Think of those old tape machines. It's kind of more of a mimicking of an old tape machine, old tape computer, than a modern processor. Registers are fast, so that's why I designed a register-based virtual machine. Now, a byproduct of that is a register acts similar to a non-fungible token. It's got a unique identifier. It's got a register address. It's kind of part of a global collective memory bank, right? You can modify. You can see the history of your registers. You can set certain values of them. Sorry, too fast. To be mutable, certain values can be immutable. So I can say, like, the serial number can't be changed, but this description can be changed, and that's enforced cryptographically through the 7-layer software stack.
And that's
so,
user-controlled.
You can, so it's easy to build on API, and part of the API, I built a structured query language that goes on top of the register virtual machine. So in about 1,500 milliseconds, I can scan the entire blockchain and find every asset that has an L in it or anything with whatever tags. So that functions really well for metadata, for files in an IPFS cluster. IPFS stands for Interplanetary File System. So Ernest, Freedom's Phoenix, MC, he's been doing IPFS for a while, but there's an architectural issue with IPFS is you just have all these hashes, but you don't know how to index them, so you usually rely on a centralized database, but he wants decentralized search. So happened to build it. Now we're building a demo.
Trying to make a platform, so like Odyssey and library and all this, so that you can just access his videos no matter what, and very easily. You don't need YouTube anymore because you can just go to this.
But search is the problem with IPFS clusters because you need some way to index, right, and have an open index that's also immutable and verifiable. So we're putting together a little demo that we're going to air on the corporate report on Wednesday, kind of showing how decentralized search can function. And it works pretty well on Nexus just because of our architecture and the designs and stuff. So it's pretty cool to start to get into that. And
so you're the decentralized Google of the future.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, well, that's just one aspect of it because we need an open indexing system that anybody can search and develop open algorithms on. So you have transparency in how everything's indexed. So if you have an open system where this segues in NFT, because I think I won't get too deep in the technical details, but non-fungible token, fungible means not exchangeable for anything. It's unique, right? So there's a lot of NFT fundraising, but you can do a sub-tokenization where you can sell that specific token for it. But I'm kind of curious. There's a lot of hype around it, so I think there's a little bit of misnomer on the precision of what that word means, which is non-fungible token. It's just a unique, apples are fungible. You can exchange apples for apples, but an NFT is a unique fingerprint. So as she does, you put unique things that are tied to the physical world, like art or anything else in there, and then you can sell it. On Nexus specifically, you can divide the ownership of an NFT and have actually revenue split directly between everybody automatically based on your percentage ownership. And so we have a whole NFT functionality as a byproduct of our register-based virtual machine that also includes search functionality on the global blockchain that doesn't rely on anybody's secondary indexes. That's also really fast because I built a new database from scratch to replace the existing databases because blockchains don't scale, people don't scale. So I've been on the how do we scale people, how do we scale blockchains? And the database is part of it, but then because of all of that work, it just ended up that search works pretty well, so now we're going to make a demo. So, and it's the beginning of the decentralized search open indexing system, so it's going to be really cool to see that actually come to life and materialize as soon as it got here. Just All right.
I'm going to get with Vit here. All right. Vit, last year, this is Vit Jedlika, if you know. He's the president of Liberland. Fuck politicians. But not this guy. Sorry. Anyway, last year we were talking a little bit about Liberland being a virtual country.
Well, not really. I mean, for us, the metaverse that we're building is really more like a cyber urban incubator of what we want to build, right? But it's kind of cool to have everything kind of backed up. So you just don't have the physical space, but you have also the virtual space, and you can access all the governmental services through that. But let me just get back a little bit to that DAO discussion, because that's of course a big topic in Liberland. How do we properly decentralize stuff? But how do we actually take the best out of the existing political systems, and how to combine it with the best with what is there in the technology? Because there has been a track record of trying to write the right constitution, which is difficult to twist around, and we've been working actually 6 years now on really trying to put together different elements from different constitutions which were kind of bulletproof from the past, and we also tried to make sure that the basic principles are really, really tough to break, even if the society kind of breaks. But I think that's the main point here, always, the organization is as good as its members. The technology of the governance itself can sometimes save the day, like it happened now in Czech Republic, by the way. I'm originally Czech, and they just couldn't get the pandemic law through. That's kind of cool. They had everything lined up. Pfizer told them, you don't have to do the mandatory vaccination, but you have to pass this pandemic law. And actually, the judges put the previous things that people had to follow, including they tried to segregate the vaccinated and non-vaccinated. The Czech legal system got rid of it, and the Senate actually blocked the new law, which would which would remove that block. So sometimes it happens in existing societies that it works. Unfortunately, as you can see in so many other countries, that it doesn't. But we try to take the best out of Swiss constitution, a little bit of U.S. constitution, what has been really good, and that's why Liberland was actually founded on Thomas Jefferson's birthday, because we really believe there was something to the U.S. constitution, a little bit of meritocracy from Singapore, and we combined all of these things with the best tech that we could find that is kind of well tested, and it's already working, and we're 1 year in development of our decentralized government, actually like first decentralized autonomous government, which is running on the principles of the constitution that we've been working on last 6 years.
How long until that's in effect?
Well, we would really like to launch it in April, but I don't want to promise anything anymore because we wanted to launch it last April, but then we changed the whole stack of the code, and sometimes it's difficult with the coders, right? So you know how it works. Sometimes you are not in a mood and things don't go as you're planned, and sometimes there are other people depending on you. So we changed the technology, but I'm really happy about the team now. We've got three great programming studios that are collaborating together. I hope we will get next month a grant from Polkadot Foundation as well for what we're doing. So I'm quite optimistic that things will actually go quite fast, and then we will have a first properly decentralized justice system on top of that. We have a separation of powers, which I think is actually quite a good thing. As you could also see from Czech Republic, sometimes they just cannot make the under-table deal, so the system actually works as it should. So that's our mission, to make this working, and I think we're quite unique in what we're doing, and it's something that needs to be done as soon as possible. And then I hope to get a couple more millions Liberlanders on board and turn Liberland into one of the fastest growing countries in the world.
And will there be virtual businesses and?
Well, in the metaverse itself that we're planning, we are planning to actually have the parcels as in parallel to the physical parcels, and people will be able to do business. We do register businesses already for the last 6 years. So there are Liberland only registered businesses, mostly crypto and programming shops, and mostly actually hackers. I think number one business in Liberland that has been open and is quite successful with some, I would say, really award-winning hacking studios. They are coming from Liberland. So I'm quite grateful about the community of the programmers and hackers that is registered in Liberland only, and they do their business under Liberland flag.
Awesome. And how do I get a Liberland passport?
That's quite easy. You just need to register for it. And I took Peter out of the office after many months. Peter Krovina is our registrar for citizenship. He's got another 4 people under him now. So because we're growing quite fast, but he's taking care of new citizens. So when you register for e-residency, you get a call, and then they figure out how to fit you into Liberland society.
Will you be doing them at Anarchapulco?
Sorry?
Whether you'll be doing passports at Anarchapulco?
Well, I think there is some special event prepared for tomorrow 11. Aristotle actually told me he's organizing something, so we might give out couple citizenships. So let's see how that works tomorrow.
Oh, we're going to auction off some citizenships? Oh, this is all for the charity things, which also, by the way, the NFTs that Volition Labs are doing are for charity as well. So I don't know which charities, but hopefully it's going to be the Marsh Home.
Awesome.
Do you guys had any questions about Liberland? Or?
Oh my gosh.
I know it was really interesting. The whole virtual citizenship, being able to have a virtual business, and within Liberland is pretty cool. And is that going to be the next name that you see on ships everywhere?
No, I think
what's
actually
the name of the country?
there is going to be a cruise, and Jeff Berwick has the ship registered under the Liberland ship register, so we will be flying only Liberland flag on that ship. So he's taking us for a trip, I think, 2-3 days. So
It's interesting for me because if you study the golden age of piracy, what the pirates did was they set up their own ports all around the sort of trading routes that they pirated, and they created their own completely different, until the kind of British government monarchy came in and destroyed the whole golden age of piracy. They'd really created their own sort of trading routes and their own sort of ports throughout sort of the Caribbean and North America, and it feels like there's a renaissance in that, you know.
I don't think really Liberland is a pirate nation in that sense. I mean, we were happy that the pirate currency also guys are helping us a little bit, but we're really not pirates, even though actually the place where Liberland is set up was a former port like this on Danube River. So there is interesting history to that. I think we're trying to be as decent, freedom-loving nation as possible, and we're really trying to take the best out of ideology and best out of the technological world and combine it to create a nice place for people to live in.
Is your land sovereign?
Sorry?
Is your land sovereign? Like independent of any existing
It
country's
is,
legal
it
infrastructure?
is like our country is sovereign country from the very beginning.
Jurisdiction sovereign?
How'd
you get the sovereignty?
Well, you declare yourself sovereign, right?
In what
there is
country
nobody
did you
that can declare you sovereign, or there is nobody that you should ask to start a new country, right? You can only get more recognition by other countries. And I'm quite happy if we, for example, had a nice diplomatic visit to El Salvador. We cut a deal with Haiti last year. So we're building up our reputation with the sovereign countries that are members of the UN step by step.
Yeah.
We're trying to get Liberland recognized. But that doesn't mean that Liberland is any less of a country than other countries in that sense.
What's the genesis then? How did you, like, you stake land in the middle of what country and say, hey, I'm sovereign? Like, what's the genesis? How did it start?
There was one spot on the planet left, which is between Croatia and Serbia.
Okay.
And
part of Yugoslavia? Like an old neutral zone in Yugoslavia.
And there is a really nice video which hit, I think in 4 days, they had 1 million views, like last week, if you put Liberland, which in a very neutral way explains how Liberland and the whole story was created.
Okay.
So it was quite viral, but it is a very special situation in which neither country actually claimed the land.
Okay.
And right after Liberland was established, Serbia declared that they don't mind creation of Liberland on this territory. But Serbia was the last known official owner of this place. Croatia never accepted this piece of land into their territory. Until now, it's not in a single Croatian map. But they're giving us some headache. It's not very easy to build in Liberland to stay permanently in Liberland, because even though they don't claim it, but they kind of don't appreciate our presence. But we don't mind actually, because for us it's kind of a security for free at this stage. And we have to give them some credit for that. Like, they're guarding Liberland against everybody for the last 6-7 years. Yeah. And they're basically building us, or buying us more time to build up our legitimacy, which I'm quite grateful for at this stage.
Okay. So you kind of like there was a little place in Hong Kong too, like with the British and the Hong Kong, it was like Kowloon or something. That, remember that little squatter, like super dense populated? It was like this little jurisdiction loophole, nobody claimed on it. So you found that in the breakup of Yugoslavia, and then you kind of just parked there and then claimed sovereignty there, and then that was the genesis of Liberland.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Then you've been building up your reputation through technical proficiency as your bargaining chip to build
we really want to
the recognition
build
from other
an
countries.
ideal state, and we're trying to be as helpful as possible. And I think the El Salvador adoption of Bitcoin is great, and who do you think is behind it? I mean, the Liberlanders, it's 700,000 people all around the world pushing freedom idea, pushing cryptocurrencies. It's a huge lobbying group. We have now in 110 countries somebody representing Liberland, which is quite powerful, right? So we are a nation, and we are also a country. We still have a bit of a problem with the territory.
The borders. People push the borders, right?
With the borders.
They burn your border houses and stuff. And
yeah, we had some incidents.
Do you have any military?
With the boats? No, we don't plan to do that. We're really free, not just freedom-loving, but also very peaceful.
So you're doing like an economic angle as far as like building, you're like, okay, well, we're going to provide economic benefit to your countries through the freedom principles. That's how we maintain our borders, because you kind of help us maintain the borders with your military, but we still get some ruffians that kind of push it, but you want to be a peaceful, non-military, economic driving place like Switzerland and Europe.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. And right now, because we don't want to push Croatia too hard, and they were kind of okay with the status that we have with them as well. Yeah. But we're massively now investing into Serbia. We're building free trade zone there. We're also building village over there. So all these projects, I will do a small, actually first intro ever of these projects, which are already happening. I didn't want to announce them before everything is set up. So I will do a small presentation tomorrow at 11:30 about a couple of very nice physical projects that are happening on the borders of Liberland right now.
Right on, man.
So just obviously watching the whole situation in Trakistan and in Canada, and you have this, as you see, so often these big revolutionary movements that kind of gain traction and then get to a certain point, and then often if you watch like The Square in Iran, you know, there's that documentary about the revolution in Iran and everything, and then the kind of energy dissipates when they really don't know what to do once they actually start to take control of their country. And I just wonder to what extent you're able to kind of go and give advice and consultancy to sort of revolutionary movements such as in Canada at the moment.
Well, we are actually diplomatically neutral country. So whenever we start intervening in somebody else's policy or somebody else's whatever they're doing, no matter how crazy it is, it's not very much aligned with our Jeffersonian foreign policy premises. But we actually had to say something about the truckers because there are so many Liberlanders involved. You know, including Justin Booth, who's been messaging with me all the time. He's doing the fundraising, etc. So we provided them with a little bit of legal expertise on site, as well as we gave them a small diplomatic note support, because I think that's kind of, you know, it was kind of extraordinary what was happening there. But outside of that, we're really trying to be neutral, trying to stick low, you know, let the countries do whatever they want, because we don't want. What else do we want from somebody else? Just let us live, right? That's our motto: live and let live. So we did a small comment on these issues, but otherwise, the best advice is stop basically voting if your country is going to hell, and vote with your feet, right? No matter if you're going to El Salvador or if you will support Liberland or if you move to Mexico, it is probably the most effective way how to show your government that you're serious about not supporting it.
How many countries are recognizing Liberland right now?
Right now, okay, it has a different stages. So what we signed a deal with Haiti last year. We had a very nice diplomatic visit to El Salvador with all the technicalities. We have 4 or 5 other countries which are having diplomatic contacts with us. So we're trying to build it up into a regular diplomatic recognition, but it's one more step up. And I'm telling, it's not an easy job to get that done. It is a difficult multi-year project in each of these countries, and we are trying to be as helpful as possible. Of course, hook the government on Bitcoin as soon as possible. Try to get them to implement a little bit more transparency, and bring them business, and that's what we're about right now.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like
And
El Salvador should be easy pickings with the Bitcoin laws that are there.
Also humanitarian stuff, right? We also donated, for example, Bitcoin to the Child's Hospital in the center that gave us some nice coverage. So we appreciated the fact that they adopted Bitcoin by giving some charity to their hospitals. So it's a combination of these things, and of course, you know, friendship. We need to build friends in these countries step by step in these governments. So,
are you getting any pushback from the U.S. or do they even care?
Nah, I think Trump was an interesting person to be in office for a couple of years, and for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was that he was also considering starting his own country a couple of years before he ran for president. So he might have a little bit of affinity through that.
Was the flag orange hair or what?
I have, I don't know the details.
What country was that? I'm fascinated.
I just heard the rumors. So I think it's possible. I consider
Trumpistan.
So I think with and now with Biden in place, of course we have a little bit less contact with that administration, but we're still trying to keep good relations with whoever is in power and try to push things, forward for Liberland. And if not, then things are stalled for a while, but we will just move on when things get unfrozen a little bit. And the same thing with Croatia. We're trying to make friends, trying to do business. If they reject it or push us back, we are not pushing. It's not necessary for us. Like, we are no longer. It's very important when you switch your mindset from fighting the system to basically starting building your own system, right? Like, you find out how much more energy you're saving, and you stop being so upset about whatever is happening in the world. You just do your own business and let the others do their own.
Colin, I wanted to ask you about what flaws do you see in his plan for the DAO? And
I don't know his plan for the DAO yet.
Voting and setting up the whole country on a DAO.
I'd have to sit down with him and like talk. But I mean, you know, if we want, I mean, we've had the Crypto Norway conference. Remember a couple years ago with.
Yeah, we were all.
We
on
were there.
the-
We were talking.
were,
about, we were down. You guys were in
It
some
wa- we-
initial
I was
stages.
on the panel with
you were
you.
there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. It was cool. So it's cool.
And
It's cool to
Richard
run
Howard.
into you again, man. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you want to sit down, we'll get some time. Like I'm working on DAO social architectures. Kind of like because I started studying the whole DAO corruption issue and like how do we make like a truly free sovereign state, right? You know, you have like federations, confederations, whatever, you know, and then all these different structures, you know, separation of powers, right? But I started kind of noticing some other issues like that would form around that as they're all still like focused on singular people, which like for certain purposes like military action, it's you know, having a single person can make decisions faster so you don't have all this, you know, issue with like quick reaction times. But like on the other side of it, like I've studied a lot of corruption and stuff, so I've been developing a social architecture and cryptographic architectures to support that, right, with Nexus and stuff. We've talked about it a little bit before. It's just been cooking for about 6 years. Like, I'm like you. I cook it and cook it and cook it, and we're running it now on Nexus. It's been going for about 6 months, and it flushed all the, like, there was moles in our team. We didn't even realize. It flushed them out. It was crazy. So, like, if you want to geek out on that, like, I can understand what you're doing. I mean, that's about the best I can respond on that, because I don't fully know what you're doing. But I'm sure you're cooking up some cool stuff, but maybe there's some little color I can add to it too and help. So that's. Yeah. I'm happy to help. So I mean,
Awesome.
that's my best response.
Any final words?
You know, I'm really grateful to be here. It's a great year in Anarchapulco again, and it's great to meet people that we met 3 years ago, and now we can build up on it. So, you know, I'm also happy to meet anybody of you that is interested in building a new country. We don't have that much competition so far, but I'm wondering what you guys
Well, I
are
was gonna
going to
say,
take
because-
over.
I've been working on this too. I've been working on the new country thing for a long time, but like I kind of like I always had the sovereign land issue, right? You got to find a corrupt government to get it, or like you found like that jurisdiction loophole, which is luck.
You mean
know
a
what I
hippie?
And,
You mean
know,
a
I mean,
hippie
and skill
commune?
too. But like no,
You
I
mean
mean
a hippie commune, right?
as a part, I have found something in the U.S. that gives us an equivalent, right? So we've kind of like shifted from the new country thing to like insulating ourselves from a country and then utilizing their military to protect our sovereign land, but making it actually jurisdiction sovereign free. So we're going to go over that too. I don't know if it would apply to you, but we're working on similar things, right? Like having a fully, purely decentralized system. And I mean, decentralization is an art. That's why I like to see that you're spending 6 years at it, because, you know, so many people are just like, hey, I built it, it works. Like, yeah, let's put it out. But it's so different, and that's why they're so lost. Like, even all this corporate money, they're throwing it at the wall, and it doesn't stick because it's a new way to think, and you know that old mindset doesn't really work. So like, I like that you guys are spending your time to do it right, and it's really cool. Like, you know, getting it in, because like it's really important for us to start demonstrating. You know, Buckminster Fuller, right? You know, you don't change things by fighting the existing reality. You change things by creating a new model that renders the existing model obsolete, right? So, hoorah, man.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I've visited a lot of sovereign communities here in Mexico, and there are a lot of them actually that are completely independent from government. It's quite surprising, but you know, they're really quite technology resistant. You know, so it's very interesting to see you kind of pushing the sovereignty thing, but then also combining that with, you know, these very forward technologies. You know, and I think it just got to experiment, really, isn't it? Because it's such new such new territory. You know, so it's just great that you're pushing that forward to see whether it is possible to organize society according to an online DAO or not. You know, whether we need that level of like online organizational presence, or whether we organize ourselves outside of that or not. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. You know, it's.
I don't even think we have an option, right? Like what we're doing is breaking the paradigm so much that we actually need to utilize everything that is at our hand to be able to make it. So. You know, I always knew we have to go that way, and now it's just about the principles which are really built into it. I want to make sure that what we build will be able to sustain itself for, you know, okay, hundreds of years would be nice, you know, if that sticks. So for me, that's important. But what we did actually, and just maybe one thought about our way of approaching things. We only made one institution to be able to make new laws. But we've got 3 institutions that can get rid of them, right? Because that is always the problem of modern society. It overregulates itself, overtaxes itself, and just it's a machine for nonsense laws all the time, right? So what we wanted to do with Liberland was basically have a very strong corporate governance, but that is in check by democracy, it's in check by kind of monarchy, it's in check by the court system. So all these kind of other models which are normally used to govern the country, like democracy, is not being used to run new laws, but it's being used to keep the corporation that runs the state in check, which I think it's a fair way, because the less laws you have, the better usually.
Are the taxes voluntary?
Of course, in Liberland, it is. They're building in the constitution. It will take a hardcore majority to change that. So, and whenever you pay more taxes, you get more shares of the country, which I think is fair. Like,
I wanted to touch on something that she mentioned. There's here in Mexico, there are several places that are under tribal rule, because of the Mexican Constitution allows for a city to go under tribal rule. They can basically secede from the country and become their own little, entity. Chiron did that. Recently, I was in Yalapa, and they don't have any police. They're under a ejido rule, is what it's called. What other places have you come in contact with here in Mexico?
Well, there's quite a few in Chiapas, actually, and I went to one where there was in Chiapas, there were about 42 communities that all came together and signed a group declaration that they sent to the government that said, do not bring your vaccine into any of our communities. And I actually went to go and see the director of the hospital there, and he said he would never dare bring a vaccine into that community for fear of death. So I wouldn't say they have the same constitutional arrangement as Chiran does, but they certainly just exert their sovereignty in the way that you're talking about. They don't. They do create declarations. Really quite formal legal declarations. Amazingly, because most of them don't even have mobile phones or speak Spanish or anything. But they come together in this very decentralized way, and they, for many communities, and they'll stand in the town square and have meetings together, and out of that will come this declaration that gets sent to government, and government respects it amazingly. So, there's quite a few communities like that, and
There's a lot of Indian, well, I don't know, native language spoke here, indigenous language. I know most of these kids over here at the orphanage, they speak Mixteca, and they come from all the mountains and villages around here. I'm going to be traveling with some of those kids and to see their family at the end of this month, and just find out, what goes on in these little villages. And so I can't wait to find them. But I would like to find out about the areas that you're talking about. I want to go there and check it out. I went to Chiron, and it is very interesting the way they do that. There is no leader. There's just like a council, and each block of the neighborhood of the town is represented by one person, and those people go to the center of town and they stand in line, like whatever, are we going to vote on having a new fountain? People get in a yes line, people get in a no line. The whole town can actually see what the vote is, because it's right there in front of them.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting, you said about your peaceful nation, and I think the thing that they've achieved most in Chiran is they've achieved peace. So you'd expect these communities that have fought for their independence to be in a constant state of conflict, but actually the opposite is true, that they live extremely peaceful. Chiran has the lowest crime rate in the country or something, and they're totally just self-policing, self-governing, but I think that's what they've really achieved is peace, which is beautiful.
When I went there, I had a guide that took me around, and one of the questions that I asked him about that is, after the revolution, what was it like? What was life like? And I asked him, drunks and drugs and all that, and he said that, there were less arrests, less people were on drugs, less people were having family violence and all kinds of stuff, just because they had gotten rid of government. And so taking the politicians out first was the first thing they did. They attacked them, threw them out of town. Then they threw the police out, and so there's no police to protect the cartel. And then they threw the cartel out, and now they have their own volunteer police that are lined up at every entrance of the city, and they're just checking to make sure that no one from the cartel is coming in. And it's a rotational volunteer, so it's never like one person at one stop, and you don't know who's going to be there or whatever. So it is really interesting. If you can go there, I highly recommend going and checking it out.
Could I add something? Just you brought up something that reminded me when you talked about less drugs, right? There was this experiment with rats. So they took rats and they put water in one water bottle and they put heroin in another water bottle, and then put the rat in isolation, and the rat in isolation drank the heroin and eventually overdosed and died, right? Then they did the same thing but in a communal space with rats together as friends, right? And they put the water bottle and the heroin bottle. They never touched the heroin bottle, right? So they found that drug use and that degrading drug use is a part of that isolation. So when you say they removed the government, they got rid of the cartels, and they made this more organic, internal structure where it was, representative, and they felt connected to one another. They felt the need to do the drugs less, right? And it made a higher functioning society. So it's interesting that is a good example of, a way to solve that epidemic in the world, right? Instead of fighting it at the tail end of the issue, you find the root of it, right? Which is human connection. When people don't feel connected to one another, then they're gonna
Well, it's interesting if the DAO can solve that, so that people actually have a tangible sense of ownership in the democratic system.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that might directly actually, because it's quite hard to have sort of purchase on the overarching organizational, but the DAO would give you a very kind of tangible.
Just to add one more little thought, because you brought that up again. So we're doing DAOs, we're talking DAOs, right? So I had this one revelation one day. I was like, I'm a dad, but I'm running an autocracy, but I'm designing DAOs. I was like, oh, I need to make my family a DAO. So we all vote on the rules, and dad gets in trouble if I break their rules, and it changed everything. My son went from getting in trouble at school to being he's a star student. Now they just won the science fair. I mean, they're just
wow, you should
blossoming.
write about that.
Yeah,
that
I'm writing it into a family formula, definitely, because it's
Hollywood
something
movie.
we're so conditioned to autocracies because that's all there's been for thousands of years, right? But when you switch it into this bottom-up power structure where everybody's equally accountable to it, right, and it becomes this type of meritocracy where you're seeking growth and change, right, rather than control over one another, and it completely changed my children, night and day, DAO. So, I mean, it works on, any level of the fractal, whether it's societal or
So you are a
family.
proponent, actually, of the DAO.
Oh, I am. Well, I'm in the architectural phases. I've got a lot of the software to supply it, and we have the foundational trust system that we've been building for about, that's got about 7 years of history of different, contributors and stuff, and that's important just for the old money, new time problem. We want new time to buy new money, not old time to buy new money, right? Or old money to buy new time, because money doesn't age, right? And they have all the money in the world, so we need to render their money null and void. That's the trick with the voting in the DAO that I've been trying to solve.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that concept. Could you just slow that down again? So old money,
old
new
money
time.
buys new time, right? All that old Rothschild money and all that bank money is buying all of our time, right? Because we're spending our time to get their paychecks. We need to make the old money useless for the new time. Right, where we don't honor that funny money, right? And one way to do that is cryptographically verify and demonstrate you've put a certain amount of time into a system along with a certain amount of money, so that you can't just go buy your way into the system and say, I'm going to throw.
You mean turning time into a currency in its own right?
Yes,
in a sense,
yes,
right.
And that's one thing that we do, and then also different checks and balances and separations, and then all the way into the social architecture and stuff. But I've tested it in lots of different areas over the last 6 years, and I've studied corruption, I've seen corporate corruption, I've been through Hollywood, I've been to big businesses, and I've seen it all, man. And that's part of what birthed this
you think
architecture
at its
too.
core, there's isolation there at the core of corruption in the same way?
I think honestly, the core of it, I just know, is lack of precedence. That's kind of really, I've really studied it, and it's just when there's a lack of a precedence, people just, precedent set. The precedence is just one guy's in charge, and grease the wheel, and they create all their power channels. And when there's not really a precedence, everybody just kind of makes their own little power channels, kind of like ants, And when you set a precedence, it kind of focuses all of our energies together a little bit more. So decentralization, because of lack of precedence, kind of succumbs to entropy, and you fall into these central figures or these central voting pools, with Dash, right? And it degrades into that. So. Setting those precedences are important, and that's come through the human program, the human code, right?
So when you say setting precedent, do you mean setting an example?
In a way, yeah, in a way, and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, right? With me and the kids, we set those precedences together through a vote, right? And we decided what we all want. They don't like it when I say swear words,
So
I'm just okay, I have to be better.
Can you use this DAO to go ahead and get our internet up into space from your dad? Or
well,
what?
that's the internet DAO stuff is a whole other conversation.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
we need to wrap it up right now. We've only got a couple of minutes left. So here, tell me all about what's your information. How can people find out about Volition Labs?
Volitionlabs.io, trying to bring back the punk in cypherpunk. But Come and see us. We have a desk over there. We're we're powering the Anarchapulco NFT lounge. So if anything within this conversation has piqued your interest on the subject of NFTs, DAOs, any of this stuff, come and visit us. We're over there. And next to the place where Ulysses XYZ has got his NFT show that's kind of going to evolve over the next few days. And come and talk to us, and we'd love to have a chat with you.
Colin Cantrell, Nexus.io. We're doing lots of fun stuff. If you want to find out, you can find me or Danny or Ernie or get phones or I don't. Yeah, and we got a booth way back there. You go talk to Phil and Carla and learn about the satellites and the internet. Like, long story short, like decentralize everything. So hardware, software, human programs, aka social architecture, right? Because our brains and computers are somewhat symbiotic. They're reflective of each other. Neural pathways, circuits, blah blah blah. So. We're kind of just focusing on all the problems that need solutions to help people like you, build it. I've just seen technical deficiencies, learned by studying the Bitcoin code, and then just continued the work, and now we're here. So, if you want to talk, we're happy to help. We like to help. That's why we built it, are building it. And yeah, I'm Colin. So.
Well, as I said, we're building a first decentralized autonomous government, which is based on libertarian principles. And I'm quite happy that a couple of you are already citizens, even sitting here. But of course, it takes 5 minutes to register for e-residency first step. So it's just liberland.org. And we will probably have Peter, who is somewhere in the back. He is going to take care of you very shortly after you would register. And he will guide you through the rest of the process of becoming a citizen.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for listening, watching, and participating. And come and get his... passports. You're passing out how many passports?
Well, right now we actually just issued regular passports. We haven't had them. We just had diplomatic ones for quite some time. But since now they become more and more useful, we got the regular passports, and the last batch was 5,000 passports. So we're printing hard.
Awesome. All right. Thanks.
Good sitting with you
Thank
guys.
you.
Air hugs.
Group hug.
Get a picture very quick.
So sweaty.
It was good.